Alright, I admit it. I might have been a little too harsh on my Mario Kart 7 video. After all, most new tracks introduced in Mario Kart 7 were actually some of the best that the Mario Kart franchise has to offer. And I didn't put as much emphasis on how revolutionary gliding and underwater mechanics really were. Without Mario Kart 7, we wouldn't have Mario Kart Tour or 8 Deluxe. Besides, Mario Kart 7 looks surprisingly good for a Nintendo 3DS title. That being said, I still think it is the most forgettable Mario Kart. However, most of you did not share my opinion, which is completely understandable. We are all entitled to our own opinions after all. I won't judge you for your bad taste. Regardless, today I am here to explain why I like Mario Kart Super Circuit for Game Boy Advance so much, and I swear it has nothing to do with it being my first ever video game. Before delving into analyzing Super Circuit, it is important to understand why some may consider it the most forgettable Mario Kart release. See, Mario Kart Super Circuit is the third installment of the Mario Kart franchise and was released a whole 5 years after its predecessor, Mario Kart 64. And Mario Kart Super Circuit was for Game Boy Advance, the third iteration of Game Boys released. Previous Game Boy models, Game Boy and Game Boy Color, hadn't received any Mario Kart games, likely due to hardware limitations. However, the Game Boy Advance was a different beast. I mean, damn, 96 kilobytes of VRAM and 240 by 160 screen? Sign me up, baby! But alas, the timing of Super Circuit's release could not have been any worse. Super Circuit was announced in the year 2000 and eventually released in the second half of 2001. During this time, Nintendo had announced their brand new home console, GameCube, for worldwide audiences, and it ended up releasing worldwide for 2001's holidays. And while at this point Mario Kart was still relatively new as a franchise, it was only natural for Nintendo to release a new game for their new device. After all, they had showcased some gameplay footage of a new Mario Kart game in E3 2001. Mario Kart Double Dash eventually released in 2003, only 2 years after Super Circuit's release. Sure, today having a fresh Mario Kart release every 2 years doesn't sound that strange, since we are all used to getting a new Pokemon game every year anyway. But back then, kids didn't have drop shipping or any other get-rich-quick methods at their disposal, so they had to ask their parents to buy these games for them. So reasonably, waiting for a new home console release might have been wiser than getting a handheld system just for Mario Kart. After all, GameCube ran on a superior 24 MB of RAM, 3 MB of SRAM, a CPU that could probably rival Intel Atom, and a GPU that could handle up to 90 million polygons a second. It even supported 640 by 480 screens. Essentially, Super Circuit just had one pro in its pocket. The GameCube Advance was a handheld system, meaning that by purchasing Super Circuit, you could finally have a Mario Kart game on the go for those pesky long car trips. And back then it was awesome for sure, but when Nintendo released their next handheld console, the Nintendo DS with Mario Kart DS in 2005, just 2 years after Double Dash, people had no reason to buy Super Circuit solely for a handheld experience. And even I admit, Mario Kart DS does it better. So understandably, Super Circuit was then forgotten and only remembered when YouTubers do these retrospectives of all the Mario games. But I never forgot about this game. Why? Since it fucking slaps. Mario Kart Super Circuit may just seem like another Mario Kart game, and well yeah, while it is quite bare bones to some extent compared to later installments, it is not without its own unique charm. Super Circuit was the last Mario Kart game without any kart customization or multiple unlockable characters. That means that what you see is what you get, 8 playable characters, all of whom have the same kart, a classic pipe frame from Super Mario Kart and Mario Kart 64. The playable roster is the same as in Mario Kart 64, and each character's stats have been rounded into 2 different categories, speed and weight, each with 5 different levels that are displayed with stars. Furthermore, each character has a third hidden modifier that is divided from their speed stat, that being acceleration. For example, Toad has a speed rating of 5 and a weight rating of 1, but his base speed is actually 1, while his acceleration stat is 5, meaning that he accelerates the fastest. On the other hand, Bowser has a speed rating of 1 and a weight rating of 5, making him the heaviest driver of the bunch. In actuality, Bowser's base speed is 5, but his acceleration stat is 1, meaning that while he is the fastest character in terms of top speed, his lack of acceleration may slow down his ability to reach that speed. Therefore, for a casual player, it may be easier to settle on a character like Mario or Luigi, whose stats are well rounded for any track. And as per usual, characters that are heavyweight can easily knock nimble characters like Toad or Peach off the circuit on tracks like Sky Garden with limited space to move around. All in all, while your average casual player can opt into using any character of their choosing and still enjoy the game, a more competitive player may select a character based on the track. I think this is honestly a more optimal option over something like the Funky Kong Flame Runner meta in Mario Kart Wii, as this allows any character to be a viable choice. In single player, players have only 3 gameplay options: Mario GP, that is just a normal Grand Prix mode, Time Trial, and Quick Run, that serves as a big brother to later introduced VS mode for single player. In Quick Run, you can drive individual races against AI. Surprisingly, you can somehow still tweak certain options in Quick Run, those being the lap count or an ability to turn coins and items on and off. And while these settings are very minor, they are always welcome as they are essentially quality of life options for anyone seeking a challenge. Oh yeah, speaking of coins, Super Circuit was the last Mario Kart game to include coins until their reintroduction in Mario Kart 7. Just like in Super Mario Kart, players can collect coins that are glued onto the racetrack. Drivers start up with 5 coins, lose 1 coin for hitting a wall or another driver, 2 coins for going off the track, and 4 coins for getting hit by any item. If drivers run out of coins entirely, they will spin out upon an impact with another driver. However, upon reaching 10 coins, drivers will reach their top speed, but unlike in newer games, players can keep collecting their coins, which serve more as a stockpile to keep their max speed. These coins also play a huge part in rating a player's Mario GP performance, as more coins contribute points towards this game's overly complicated star rating. But to summarize, to 3-star every cup, players should maintain stable lap times for each lap, not get hit by items, collect as many coins as possible, and win every race. What I personally notice is if you collect basically every coin available and win every race, 3 stars is guaranteed as long as you didn't drop first place to last place mid-race. Mario Grand Prix mode may seem ordinary at first, but you may have to remember that Super Circuit was released in 2001 when video games were way more challenging than today. So if you were to finish a race below 4th place, you lost a life and needed to retry. Some might argue that this difficulty barrier only adds to the game's appeal by encouraging players to master every track in order to progress. As an adult, I could probably 3-star every cup blindfolded, but when I was a kid, this was absolutely brutal. And to be fair, it is an outdated arcade mechanic that shouldn't be in modern games. But anyway, one reason why it's so hard is because of Super Circuit's cheating AI. AI will rubber band you at every possible moment, no matter how perfectly you're driving. And not only that, Super Circuit's item selection is nuts. You all won't believe me, but I have once obtained a star. Yes, a fucking star when I am leading the race. So just imagine me minding my own business, leading a race, and all of a sudden just hear a Starman jingle right behind me. That's when you know that the shit is real. Item selection itself is just fine. It isn't anything spectacular, as more complicated items like the bullet bill were only released on the later installments, but it is still nothing to scoff at. Though it is a pity that some items from Super Mario Kart are missing, like the outright broken Cape Feather, which is a shame considering this game's track selection. See, what I really like about Super Circuit is how it pioneered the concept of retro tracks before Mario Kart DS came along. It features a whopping 40 tracks in total, 20 of them being completely new tracks. You may be wondering, how is this even possible? After all, Super Circuit is a game for the very underpowered Game Boy Advance. Ever since Mario Kart DS introduced an idea of retro tracks, Mario Kart games have had 32 tracks in total, with 16 of them being new tracks, Mario Kart 8 with its DLC being an exception here. And even worse, Mario Kart Double Dash, a game released 2 years after Super Circuit, has only 16 tracks. Well, see, Mario Kart Super Circuit is essentially a remade version of the original Super Mario Kart, incorporating all of its tracks as extra courses. Since Super Mario Kart had 5 tracks in each cup, Super Circuit added an additional cup to make it 5, with each cup containing 4 tracks. Those include Mushroom Cup, Flower Cup, Lightning Cup, Star Cup, and lastly, Special Cup. And this is the case for Super Circuit's own tracks as well. In addition to the extra tracks, Super Circuit also introduces the 5-lap races from the original Super Mario Kart. And I suppose that is why the 5-lap option is available for any track in the quick run mode. Unfortunately, these remade Super Mario Kart tracks aren't very faithful to the original versions of these tracks. For example, SNES Rainbow Road is lacking thwomps entirely. In fact, I would argue that these SNES tracks are direct downgrades from the original game, especially since many of these courses were built with SNES's item selection and game design in mind. However, I would still rather play Super Circuit for SNES tracks than go on my way to get my hands on Super Mario Kart and then suffer from that game's clunky, outdated mechanics. The fact with Super Circuit being a Super Mario Kart remake is evident true in Super Circuit's own level design. The newer tracks in Super Circuit are very heavily inspired, as they are plucky and somewhat claustrophobic, reminiscent of Super Mario Kart's track selection. The amount of colored block walls, sharp turns, and hazards Super Circuit uses also tells you the whole story. So to those who have only experienced Super Circuit through YouTube or by driving through retro tracks in modern Mario Kart games, these tracks may come off as unimaginative, but in my opinion they flow pretty well. Some of them anyway. At least when it comes to the game that they were designed for, as I don't think these tracks really work in later Mario Kart games. Many of these tracks were built with driving optimization in mind, meaning that the better you are at the game, the better you will do at every circuit. Since most tracks are relatively small and short in their length, even the smallest mistakes count. However, if you are very skilled at the game, you can easily make up for your mistakes and reach the top. I don't really feel the same from modern Mario Kart games where anyone could win by just getting lucky with power-ups. Sure, your chances of winning are higher if you're good at the game, of course, like this is pretty obvious. But end results may differ if you just happen to get unlucky with the blue shell. In Super Circuit, I can clearly tell if I won a race that I fully deserved it, not due to luck, but due to skillful driving. And honestly, this is somewhat lacking in modern Mario Kart games. What I adore about Super Circuit's track design is how shortcuts are implemented. In newer games, shortcuts are quite obvious and either require you to use a mushroom or a glider. They are very strict with their shortcuts and are implemented in a way that screams in your face that, "Hello, this is a shortcut! If only you had a mushroom to utilize that shortcut!" While many shortcuts in Super Circuit still need the help of a mushroom, I feel like the track design is purposely designed in a way that lets players experiment and play around with it. It is almost as if devs themselves knew how overpowered ramps are in this game and just went all out, and I honestly like that. That is why tracks like Lakeside Park and Ribbon Road are some of my favorite tracks in this whole game. They have these overpowered game-breaking ramps that just make the game very fun to play. It creates a certain skill aspect to this game that other Mario Kart games just don't have, except maybe Super Mario Kart now that I think about it. By the way, GBA Rainbow Road is top 3 Rainbow Road material. I do not care what you all will say, my opinion will stand till the end of time. Super Circuit has a plethora of lovable tracks that I have barely scratched the surface of. Cheeseland, Sky Garden, Sunset Woods, and Yoshi's Desert being good examples. What makes these tracks even more lovable are these preview images that picture the track's theme perfectly without showing any actual footage from the track itself. And while it is obvious that modern technology allows developers to showcase footage from the actual track, it is a shame that newer Mario Kart titles haven't followed suit in having these amazing preview images. But of course, what actually makes these tracks good is this game's surprisingly decent handling model. Post-edit Jaeru here, and I must confess to you all, I lied. Super Circuit's handling model isn't one of its strongest suits. While I was writing my essay for this video initially, I hadn't actually recorded any footage for this video yet, and I had completely forgotten how outdated Super Circuit's handling model is. Given that Game Boy Advance is an older handheld system, it only utilizes a D-pad instead of control sticks or circle pads. Players have control over only 4 directions, and therefore the smooth steering that would come with a control stick or a wheel is completely absent. Mario Kart Super Circuit's handling model is perhaps the most arcadic in the entire Mario Kart series, well outside of these arcade games of course. When you're turning, your driver makes a slight turn to which direction you're pressing the D-pad. If you hold that direction down, your driver makes an automatic drift maneuver. However, there is a drift mechanic itself in the game that I will call C-drifting from now on. That is because in order to pull a proper drift that prompts you a slight speed boost, you need to drift in a formation that resembles the letter C. Well, essentially, while C-drifting, you lose control over your kart and can only regain control by either cancelling the drift via a jump or by changing your direction on the D-pad. However, while C-drifting for too long, you can lose your drift entirely and spin out, losing precious time in the process. C-drifting in the game solely relies on how you started it and where you started it, because if you initiate a drift at a place where you cannot steer yourself back onto a racetrack, you will easily find yourself in the mud. Super Circuit officially has the hardest and the most rewarding drifting mechanic in all of Mario Kart games. Its tight and claustrophobic track design further emphasizes its difficulty, and to make matters even worse, the out-of-bounds hit registration is absolutely outrageous. If you go even 1 pixel off the circuit in SNES Rainbow Road, for example, you are out. This proves even further how Super Mario Kart tracks weren't actually designed around Super Circuit's mechanics. However, if you are good at drifting, you will smoothly dance through corners like an absolute speed demon. This sort of skill aspect is missing entirely in newer Mario Kart games where drifting is easier than ever before. However, despite my initial criticism, it's precisely this unconventional handling model that sets Super Circuit apart from other games in the series and, to a certain degree, makes it more enjoyable. After all, I do enjoy games with a large emphasis on skill. Completing a full 5-lap time trial in SNES Rainbow Road flawlessly is honestly some of the most satisfying things I have ever done in a video game. So yeah, maybe I was not wrong with Super Circuit's handling model being good after all. So I really like how the main menu changes depending on how much you have unlocked in a game. For example, with the new save file, the main menu will display a blue daytime sky. If you have completed around 50% of the game, you will have sunset, and 100% means you have night sky, which is really cool. But now you're all probably wondering, what about battle mode? And I guess that is understandable. After all, I mentioned that only 3 modes were available in the single player. So where's battle mode? Unfortunately, I have to disappoint you all. I have never experienced this game's battle mode since I only have 1 Game Boy Advance. Or do I? No, but in all seriousness, Super Circuit's battle mode is locked behind multiplayer that requires a game link cable, and I can understand the reasoning behind this. I mean, why would you want to have fun in a video game on your own? And well, Mario Kart 64's battle mode was also only available in split screen multiplayer, so this isn't that strange considering that this game is now 22 years old. Anyway, Super Circuit's only battle mode is the traditional balloon battle, as other modes were only introduced from Double Dash onward. And this mode only has 4 stages, yet Super Circuit's battle mode is still superior to Mario Kart 7's or Mario Kart 8 Wii U's battle modes. I mean, come on, does anyone seriously enjoy the time-based balloon battle where your balloon count doesn't actually matter in the slightest? The only reason why this was somewhat acceptable in Mario Kart Wii, which introduced the time limit to the balloon battle, is because of its large, morphing battle arenas that made them still fun to play through. Mario Kart 7's modes lack the fun aspect and personality which Super Circuit still somehow has. And we are not even here to discuss Mario Kart 8 Wii battle mode, that was just so bad. Regardless, Super Circuit excels in personality with these goofy, chibi character models that it has. But this whimsical, goofy nature of Mario Kart Super Circuit is part of what makes the game so enjoyable. Why, you may ask? Well, let me ask you all a question. What makes a Mario Kart game memorable? Super Mario Kart set the standard for casual racing games and transformed the genre, and well, it was the first Mario Kart game, of course. Mario Kart 64 featured over-the-top voice acting and shortcuts that broke the game, and people still like to go for high scores in this game. Mario Kart Double Dash introduced a two-driver mechanic that they never decided to use again. Yeah. Oh, and of course, Double Dash was the first game in the series to include multiple playable characters. I will never forget the overpowered snake drifting in Mario Kart DS, and Mario Kart DS also properly introduced retro tracks that revolutionized track selection in future Mario Kart games. Mario Kart Arcade GP games? They had Pac-Man. Mario Kart Wii's item selection was absolutely unhinged. It introduced fan-favorite bikes into the franchise, as well as had an online multiplayer so good that players are still playing it competitively today. And not only that, it was widely accessible to casual audiences with its Wii wheel mechanic. Mario Kart 8 streamlined and modernized Mario Kart to casual audiences, expanded its character and track roster to ridiculous lengths, and continues to get DLC to this day on the Nintendo Switch. And I personally always liked this professional televised racing aspect that Mario Kart 8's UI and environment design had. Mario Kart Tour was the first mobile free-to-play Mario Kart game, making Mario Kart widely accessible to almost anyone that has a modern smartphone. But since it is a free-to-play mobile game, it also falls victim to predatory gacha microtransaction practices that modern mobile games provide. Despite this, Mario Kart Tour made history as the first mobile entry in the series, leaving a lasting impact on the series no matter how bad I think the gacha mechanic is. But when it comes to Mario Kart 7, what is there to remember? Outside of introducing gliding and underwater driving, the game provides little new content. The game itself screams unoriginality, and it essentially is the 3DS version of Mario Kart Wii without the bikes or VS mode. One thing that Mario Kart 7 did get right was the start of a trend of having a retro Rainbow Road as a closing track of Lightning Cup. I personally really like that, especially because SNES Rainbow Road is pretty good in Mario Kart 7. This is until Mario Kart 8 killed that idea completely by reintroducing SNES Rainbow Road and 3DS Rainbow Road as DLC courses. And since Mario Kart 9 is nowhere to be seen, that one cool idea that Mario Kart 7 had is completely out of the window. We were so close of having an official GBA Rainbow Road remaster. Of course, this isn't Mario Kart 7's fault. However, again, it is one aspect that, in my opinion, makes the game more forgettable than, let's say, Super Circuit or Mario Kart Tour or even arcade GP games. So what unique is there left for Mario Kart 7? On the other hand, Mario Kart Super Circuit's 40 tracks and fun track design make it a standout title in the series. Yes, you could always argue that the game's graphics and sound are not as advanced as those found in modern Mario Kart games. However, these limitations do not detract from my overall enjoyment of the game. In fact, they add to the game's charm and simplicity. And that is why I love Mario Kart Super Circuit. Wow, that's the title of the video. Anyway, thanks for watching and listening. More videos soon. I'm currently busy studying for my university entrance exams, but hopefully more videos soon. So yeah, bye.